warm welcome to you all here this evening. Thank you for taking time out of your night to come tonight to network, collaborate and to learn. Just a friendly reminder to pop your phones onto silent, and should you need to use the bathroom facilities, they're just out the door, around the back here and straight ahead along the back. You'll notice up on our introduction slides here that we do have set up a hashtag for tonight on Twitter. So if you are on Twitter, we encourage you to tweet using the hashtag TMIW, which is TeachMeet Inner West, TMIW. Before we introduce our speakers and our focus for this evening, I would like to take this opportunity to introduce to you Gifted Families Support Group Incorporated. GFSG is a non-for-profit association. We're an incorporated association, and we represent New South Wales on the National Association, the Australian Association for the Education of the Gifted and Talented. So we work right from a local level throughout New South Wales into our rural and regional communities, right up to a national level, working with ACARA on developing gifted education through our Australian curriculum. GFSG focuses on a whole range of events right throughout our state. We offer to families our K-8 GEM Games Night, Games for Inquiring Minds. We also offer events for preschoolers and their families. We offer professional development evenings and our Professional Appreciation Awards, which are occurring next month in June. GFSG publishes Thought Space, our e-newsletter, which is to bring you articles and awareness raising throughout the state on the needs of gifted children. GFSG prides itself in collaborating with various unis. We've worked with and continue to work with the University of Wollongong and the University of New South Wales and Charles Sturt University out in our regional areas. GFSG recently signed a Memorandum of Understanding with the Teachers Guild of New South Wales, and we're absolutely thrilled to continue the partnership that we have established over the past couple of years. And it gives me great pleasure tonight to announce an official save the date for our Gifted Awareness Forum for Educators, which will occur on the 16th of March 2019. We've just convened a wonderful committee, and we will be formally announcing that committee later on in the month. In the Student Diversity Advice, the Australian Curriculum Assessment and Reporting Authority, ACARA, states that gifted and talented students are entitled to rigorous, relevant and engaging learning opportunities drawn from the Australian curriculum and aligned with their individual learning needs, strengths, interests and goals. And yet, according to ASA, students at both ends of the achievement spectrum are failing to achieve their potential because a one-size-fits-all approach means that neither high achievers nor underperformers were being challenged appropriately. In the digital era, how are teachers engaging technology to support high potential gifted learners in mixed ability classrooms while ensuring that they themselves do not experience burnout? Teachers Guild and GFSG poses this challenge tonight, and we are thrilled to welcome our 8 educators who will be presenting and sharing their visions, reflections and experiences on how they make this happen in their classroom. The first of our presenters tonight is Simon Harper from Clara High School. Simon is a head teacher, technology and learning. He is also a Microsoft Innovative Educator expert and one of the TeachMeet New South Wales coordinators. Simon is passionate and committed to leading digital transformation to stay on the cutting edge of education. Simon's going to be presenting for us Education for a Changing World, Teaching and Learning in an AI World. Let's make him welcome.
Thank you, Melinda. Basically, as said, I'm head teacher of technology and learning, so I drive technology at Clara High School. We're a very large school, public school. I'm very, very passionate about it. Last year, I was given 2 great opportunities through the Department of Education. The first one was I was asked by our boss to be one of 13 to be at a round table discussion on artificial intelligence and how it actually how we can change policy to really help kids. The second was the symposium, which was after that. That was 200 educators from all systems and all states to actually debate how we can actually make that change. Now, the first thing I'll just say is I'm not an expert in AI and education, but no one is because it's changing so quickly. So my presentation is looking at, you know, what is AI going to do? People will look at it from a utopian point of view and how that will actually change. So looking at the Jetsons or Star Trek, that artificial intelligence can actually change our lives and we can develop things that are going to make a real change. The other view is the dystopian view of, are we going down a dystopian pathway? The Hunger Games, the rise of the machines will eventually take over and we'll be left. These are 2 opposing views. Everyone's got an idea of, is it utopia or dystopia, or is it somewhere in between? And I'll leave it up to you to decide where you think it fits. Now, what's driving the change? Now, artificial intelligence, I'm going to talk about what artificial intelligence is, but we've got 2 here. There's the Internet of Things and that connection of all of the different things coming together, and we're already seeing that in the rapid growth of autonomous vehicles, which actually use systems on the road, the cameras, the internet, it's all tied together. And big data. Who's got a smartwatch? Yeah, who's got a phone? Well, everyone is putting out all of these, who uses Facebook and social media. So straight away, a lot of the big data is actually flowing from these apps, and it's been used to actually customise experiences for you. But looking deeper, how can we actually use that and get our kids to actually drive into the future that is changing at a larger, rapid rate than ever before? So I want to define artificial intelligence first of all. So artificial intelligence is the manipulation of big data and actually using... 10 years ago, we didn't have computers fast enough to actually manipulate all of that large data. Robots. So artificial intelligence is something that you would find in your phone, whereas robotics is also artificial intelligence, but it's the physical world. Now, it's really, really interesting that people talk about artificial intelligence and the technological revolution that's about to happen. Well, it's here. You have a look here. We've got your phone, take a photo. It's basically going to look in and put words on it. So if you type in, party, it's actually going to bring up photos of the party. It'll show you photos on any social networking sites. Siri is a form of artificial intelligence that's getting better. Google Home. Anyone got Google Home at home? Yeah? How is it? Yeah? It's good? It's getting there. Then you're looking at Facebook using, they can actually recognise people, and the AI is starting to recognise emotion. And then this one that most people don't know, these sites with Yahoo News, they've got bots actually creating the news. So it's actually written by a bot. There is no one physically writing it. And that's really, really interesting. Lower level at the moment, but we're seeing it change very quickly. Well, go back one. So robotics. It's really interesting, and I've used these images, and I'm a real sci-fi nut anyway. But when you look at robotics, we're nowhere near as far forward as we were expected. Artificial intelligence is so much further forward than what they expected. But robotics, we still can't get a robot to actually hold a remote and change a channel. But what they're expecting in the next maybe 5 to 15 years is that the robotics will actually catch up quite quickly. Now, this is the important thing for us students. is to consider, what do humans do well? All right? This is the empathy, this is the relationships, this is the understanding of emotion and how people work. We can actually work on just not a basic problem solving, but we can work around thinking outside of the square is the real strength of humans. And that expression and how we express. Then you look at what a machine can do. It can actually do analytics much faster than we can by the human brain, and it can bring together a whole range of things very quickly. How many people got here with Google Maps on their phone? Okay. Now you think basically the big data came through, all of the cars are slowing down, so it's actually said, okay, we are going to send you down a different route because of that. This is big data, this is artificial intelligence, we are already using all of these things. Logic, well-defined tasks can be done. Lawyers, I'm going to talk about lawyers, so it won't be as many lawyers because you think it might take them 2 weeks to research all the legal precedents. AI can do it in maybe an hour. So I've put this up and I'll give you the presentation. This is this is from the Changing World Symposium, and they had sociologists, they had economists, they had futurists, they had educators talking about how they see artificial intelligence, and unfortunately in 7 minutes I can't really show you that. So future changes, and this is the important one we need to consider for our students, is that they can expect to have between 3 and 5 careers and maybe in 4 or 5 different career areas. AI is already starting to change finance. I think Westpac lost 20,000 jobs. Now this is where you come back, is it a dystopia or is it a utopia over here? And the view of educators, and what I believe, is if we say, oh look, the technology, it's destroying all the jobs, but what's happening is some traditional jobs are going, but we're having new jobs coming up, and this is the challenge for us as educators. How do we educate for a world that's changing very quickly? And there are some surgeons, really interesting. Has anyone ever seen Logan's Run, the movie? No? Maybe, yeah, I'm showing my age. It was a 70s movie, but have a look. But they had a fully autonomous laser surgeon doing, all of it. And we're actually starting to see that. Who'd like to be the last one in surgery after a surgeon's been going 18 hours and they're doing open heart? Who would put their hand up? Whereas robotics, still very precise, and these are the things. Okay, job groups. And again, as educators, and this is another talk altogether, as 21st century educators, we need to actually start to model some of the things that we expect of our students. Adaptability is one of the biggest ones that we need to show kids. You'll notice that connectivity to the internet and technology is the key driver here, but these are the new world order of different types of jobs, and they are changing very, very quickly. But technology and I'm going to talk how kids use technology is really important. Okay. Don't you love it when it works? There we go. These are the general capabilities. In 7 minutes, I can't talk about all the general capabilities in their curriculum, but it's really interesting that 2 minutes, great, I'm doing well. Anyone who knows me, I always run over time and I get a ball thrown at me. It's all right. So ICT. Now, this is where we have to talk about the people. And what do we want kids to be able to do? Because if we keep driving a certain way, we will end up with a dystopia with technology. It's inevitable. So what do we do to educate kids? But the social and ethical protocols are so very, very important. Even though we may be able to create it, should we create it? You know, it's looking at the advantages to society, and in a lot of those movies, they look at the advantages and it goes really badly. Looking at how we communicate with ICT, but students have to be creators of technology. And as we know, the higher order thinking skills come in when we start to see kids creating that app or whatever it is in every subject area. The other thing that we really need to be very, very aware of is the social capability. We know that kids are going to have to be more adaptable and they're going to be have to change very, very quickly. So it's really interesting that even though this is a few years old, they've been thinking about this for a long time. So the self-awareness and self-management and being able to work around problems. Yeah, I know, it's good, isn't it? Yeah. Just a few resources for you. The video is up there, but basically this was the Education for a Changing World Symposium. I would highly recommend this book. It's actually a collection of essays from some of the key people in artificial intelligence who were at that conference. It's a great read. Now, how many people on the holidays got to read a book and got all the way through it? Oh yeah, couple. Now, people with young kids, how did you go? Yeah. That's the only book I read in the Christmas holidays, and it was a fascinating read. Thank you very much. I'll just put up here, these are my contact details if you want to have a chat. But this is about starting a larger conversation around how technology, how we can drive it to drive more towards utopia. I don't know if we'll have utopia, but I don't want dystopia. So, thank you.
Well, for me, one of the great things working in a mixed ability environment is when the gifted students make themselves known just with their own suggestions. So this was some Year 2 students out in Sefton, and we were making pyramids with spaghetti and marshmallows, and then they said, what happens if, well, one student said, what happens if we stick them all together? And you saw that bigger pyramid. Here we were making some marble mazes, so this was out at Bankstown. And so they're working in small little groups, and then one little bright spark goes, what happens if we attach all our mazes together?
Mind your finger though. Oh!
Some of you might recognise a Rube Goldberg machine. So, giving students challenges, whatever their ability, they will absolutely love. For your gifted students in a mixed ability environment, they will absolutely thrive. This was at St Ambrose Concord West, Year 3, a couple of weeks ago, and a big shout out to St Ambrose in the crowd. And we were taking apart different toys, looking at the properties, the materials inside, looking at the materials inside. But then if you know your gifted students, you maybe give them the most complex one and then get them to reassemble and rewire things and see how the guitar sounds when everything's reassembled. With technology as well, I mean, everyone says, what's the best app on an iPad? It's the camera, okay? You can do stop motion, you can do just take photos, obviously take video, and then you have the stop motion like you had there with the Play-Doh. That was with stage 3, looking at natural disasters. This was also back at Concord West. We had a student who said, can we do holograms? So we kind of cheated. And if you just get a little bit of plastic and fold it at the right angles, and there's templates out there, you can make it look like holograms. This is natural disasters with stage 3 in Campsie. And they got quite excited, as you can see. And it was a student who suggested, why don't we do that in slow-mo to see what happens? They love the disasters. This is out in Holsworthy. This is called a hive. You might have read about this in the Sydney Morning Herald. There's one primary school. This is the primary school. And the high school is down in Dapto. So they've got this sustainable building. So this building is actually generating enough electricity to power several other classrooms. And they've got this little data wall or panel within the actual classroom. And again, what we're trying to do is we're teaching the whole school about this, but then there's all these students who are just absolutely passionate. What happens when the carbon dioxide levels go up through the roof? What's going to happen to their learning? So we're using the actual spaces to draw on the enthusiasm of the kids. And then they've got their own phones or their parents' phones, and they go to Australian Museum, and you can get a kangaroo egg. hopefully some people are recognising there's an issue with kangaroo eggs. Monotremes I can deal with, but yeah. And then, something to really excite all students, but particularly those really gifted students, is if you bring an expert into the room, like Professor Geraint Lewis, who's a professor of cosmology, and such things as galactic cannibalism, then they can ask all things space or all things whatever of the experts. And there's a lot of students out there who've got some amazing questions. Here's an example of circuits in year 3, and this is just, this is a basic thing. This is great. Making a circuit with a purpose, the light at the top of the Eiffel Tower. Then if you give it to another student.
This is a miniature study with an electrical circuit. I've used a parallel circuit which contains many different outlets, so the power is distributed evenly. This is a good idea because if the power wasn't distributed evenly, it wouldn't work. This could be improved if I had added another switch.
The student chose to use telegami. We didn't tell them, and they wrote their own script there and evaluated it. Here, this is out in George's Hall. We were looking at built environments and spaces, and they had a vacant lot. They needed a new shopping centre. They had to design a shopping centre. We used Google Earth. We gave them a plan. Some kids actually built the whole shopping centre in Minecraft. Let them do it. This is a project linking in as a precursor to the Young Scientists. This Year 5 boy out at Bankstown, he actually coded the whole solar system simulation because he thought all the simulations out there weren't realistic enough. So he wanted to improve upon things.
The entire room. That was so sad. Just don't try powers.
So that's playing with spheros. That's great when you drive them around, but now if you get a lightning lab, you can get the kids to code and to program them. So that's so much more advanced than just remote control. And I must mention some really important people. That's Annie McKeating on the left and Kristen Doust on the right. I come in and do loads of fun things, but these are the teachers that actually are running gifted programs within mixed ability environments and within withdrawal within their schools. And this is a class out at Panania, and no one knows who the gifted students there, no one knows who the students are with special educational needs, but if you put them in lab coats, they have an absolute ball. Thank you.
Third in the program tonight in our first session is John Drake. John is an experienced mathematics and computing teacher, and he's currently Assistant Coordinator of STEM at Parramatta Marist High School. John's going to be presenting for us tonight on engaging with Desmos.
Hi, my name is John Drake. As my intro said, I'm a maths teacher, also got a history in computing. I'm just a STEM fanatic. I love science. I'm really geeked out with Simon's last presentation, and as a computing geek, I also geeked out in the previous one, so I'm having a lot of fun today. I just wanted to talk about Desmos and engaging students with it. It's mainly maths, but this is something that anyone that uses any maths can use, and as we know, STEM is an integrated it should be integrated throughout all curriculum areas. So this is something that can be applied anywhere, but I'm having a look at some things that are really engaging, just from my perspective as a maths teacher. My motivation for talking about this is that gifted students should be given more work, they should be given more interesting work. Okay, if you have a gifted student, you shouldn't say, oh, well, you're really good at this, here's some more exercises for you to do. That's just a waste and it's hurting them. We should give them things which are more interesting. Engagement is giving learning an interesting or fun context. So we can either choose something fun or something interesting, or hopefully both. And we should be aiming to do that in everything that we do. Unfortunately, it's not always possible, or we don't have the time to put into that, but that is something that I always look for whenever I'm in the classroom. And technology shouldn't be used to substitute a task, but to augment, modify or redesign, and for those of you who've heard of SAMO will recognise that. So, why Desmos? Desmos is a online graphing calculator. It's very useful for all sorts of things. Obviously, if you want to plot functions, you can do all that. It's really good for plotting data and finding trends. Okay, so it can fit using any function, not just linear, but quadratic and exponential, which is great for all those geo and science teachers out there. It now has some geometry aspects. I know GeoGebra is kind of the king of geometry apps, but Desmos has some really nice things that you can do there. And it's really good because it has a whole teacher section where you can, there's a lot of activities that people have created. You can create your own activities, and you can also monitor how students are doing the work, so you can create a real student-centered classroom, which is really useful. And seeing what students answer and having all that context is really great just from a teaching point of view. But I'm here to talk about the engaging tasks. So, write your name in Desmos is something that I've done as a task for quite a few years now. And the reason I think this is good for gifted students is that while this is engaging for all students, you don't have to limit them. Students can do whatever they want, whatever would make their name the nicest. So you can start with straight lines. I mean, that's pretty easy. You can work out to do that in a project. Maybe you want to add some half circles or full circles, okay? That works out nicely. That's not too much of a jump. Maybe we can go on to parabolas. Maybe you can make your whole name in parabolas. If you've got some kids who are still bored by that, maybe tell them what Bezier curves are and try and get them to write their name as if it was a font. Might take them a little bit longer, but they might explore something, learn something. And here you give them latitude to really engage with these. Marble slides is one of my favourites in that it's accessible to all students, but this is something which is really engaging. Here you drop some marbles from the top of the graph and they sort of roll down your lines, kind of like a Rube Goldberg machine. And you can see these are the two different solutions my students have come up with. And allowing students to come up with different solutions is really engaging, but when you start allowing different sort of functions, you get, you can really engage the gifted students in your class. You doesn't have to be just blank canvases. You can have different challenges that you want to give the students. So you can just give them all sorts of challenges to play with. Okay, so if the easy marble slides was too easy for the students, if they say, oh, we're bored with this, give them a challenge. Okay, give them something which is more interesting, and that is a lot of fun, hopefully. Now, art. You might think, okay, where does a graphing calculator and art come into play? Well, this is not something that I've done personally, but there's a lot of teachers out there who actually give art projects in maths where they have to create some sort of artwork using a lot of functions. So, I mean, you can create something small like that. That's quite cute. That takes a little while to do. It's a great project. Can really engage students in that. Maybe you want to be a little bit more complex. Okay, there's a whole bunch of straight lines, parabolas and circles in there. I mean, this can be a nice whole term project. And really it's not limited it's only limited by their imagination. So if they want to create something that I just don't think I could ever do, but this is something that a student has done. And so you've given the gifted students, well, any students, but gifted students, the complete latitude to explore a lot of other things. And then the final thing I just wanted to illustrate is that why not use it to create animations? Animations based on anything that they want to display, or even if they want to give it as some sort of explanation of what they can do with mathematics. There's a hashtag called GraphJam at the moment on Twitter where there's a lot of teachers playing around with this. So you can create a piston, okay, animation, which I think is quite cool. You can talk about mechanics and pistons that way. Fair enough. could we go a little bit further? Maybe we can talk about balls bouncing in a rectangle and think about, okay, where's the science context here? Where's the maths context here? Where's the engineering context here? Okay, these are just some things I've been playing around with. And this is just a very basic animation that's really easy to create, but it allows the exploration. Maybe we can go just a little bit further and see if the students can work out how to create some fireworks. I mean, that would be pretty cool. And keep in mind, these are just all using functions and lists of numbers, and all we're doing is we're changing one variable over time. And so students aren't limited by the curriculum, but they're just only limited by their imagination. And that's what I really wanted to talk about in when talking about Desmos. So coming up to the end, I think I've only, I don't think I have any time left actually. So that's all I wanted to talk about. I'm obviously quite mad about Desmos. It's one of my favourite tools to use. As I said, there's a lot of ways you can use it in the classroom. And if you ever want to learn more, you can always contact me on Twitter. Thank you.
Matt Esterman has been involved in education for over 15 years, mainly as a teacher for the last decade, focusing on history, English and technology integration. He holds a teaching degree and a Master of Arts degree from Macquarie University and a Master of Learning, Science and Technology from the University of Sydney. Matt is a keen supporter of TeachMeets and was one of the original group to begin hosting them in Australia. I'd like to make Matt welcome. Thank you.
Thanks everyone. Good evening. I'm lucky enough to have probably the shortest trip here tonight. I work here. So thank you all for coming. Hopefully we can make you feel very, very welcome. So tonight I just wanted to share a couple of very, very simple ideas that relate to pretty much any teacher in a school or pretty much anyone around the world really, which is the power of a little button that we all have, no matter whether you're at a school that has, subscribed to the Google Suite, that's subscribed to Microsoft, that's subscribed to pretty much anything, and that's the little share button. But I'll talk about that in a second. When it comes to differentiation, just recently one of my colleagues presented to us sort of her translation of some differentiation information that she got, and she boiled down or identified these 4 things that teachers can do when we're talking about differentiation. The 4 things you can differentiate for different types of learners, and this is across all the spectrum, different types of learners. So we can differentiate about the content, the product that the kids actually produce, or give to you, the learning environment, so the actual place that learning exists and the settings within that, and then the process, the way the kids actually engage with the learning. Those are the 4 things we can do, and you can do this tomorrow if you're currently teaching, or maybe if you're on prac or something. I would like to pitch to you just a really simple idea, which is to do this, sometimes all you need is this little button that sits up the corner of every Google Doc you produce, or every slide presentation, every Excel spreadsheet, whether you've got Office 365 at your school, which is typical of Microsoft schools now. If you've got Google Slides at your school, you've got this little button. If you've got a learning management system, like we've got Canvas here at Trinity, down the bottom, you can use that learning management system to invite people to particular activities or share specific things with specific students. And I think that's probably one of the most powerful things we can do, is to actually select the right activity for the right kid when it comes down to it. So we can talk about all these different activities that we're doing in class, and even though I'm a history and English teacher, I love sitting through these presentations on sort of the STEM world, which I'm sometimes allowed into, and we can develop some excellent projects and some excellent experiences for our kids. But sometimes when you're just battling through a particularly difficult week maybe, or you're just in a very typical week at school and you haven't got anything particularly amazing planned, sometimes if you just have a few different folders ready to go, in your Google Drive, if you've got a few folders ready to go in your Office 365 account, or if you've got your learning management system where you've got certain pages and they're at different reading levels, for example, or they're of different concepts perhaps, or they're requiring different things of different students, just sharing them in different configurations is sometimes enough to get that first step into differentiation. And I'm not an expert by any means when it comes to special needs of students, when it comes to special education as a discipline, as a specialty. That's, bad way of saying it, but it's night time. So what you need to do as as a typical classroom teacher is just try something. And I'd like to pitch to you that tonight, this is something that you could try, think about tonight, and do tomorrow. Whatever system you've got at your school, even if you've just got a Gmail account yourself, you could actually develop a couple of different activities and say, okay, this is for this type of student that I know has these certain requirements, whether it's visual impairments or whether the student has hearing impairments, or I've taught students with Down syndrome, with all sorts of different contexts. And that's just sort of identified things, let alone kids who are struggling at home or kids who aren't particularly interested in your subject. Like, how can people not be interested in history, let's be honest? But sometimes, every so often, you get one little outsider who doesn't like it, and you've got to do something for that. We can't just palm them off and say that's too hard. And when something's as simple as this, it's pretty straightforward. So, differentiation, using that little share button to share certain activities, certain folders, certain sets of resources, certain something that you can gather from anywhere, particularly crowds like this. As a little footnote, TeachMeet crowds are some of the most generous crowds of teachers you can find, along with the teacher associations and everything else, but we cross boundaries here, it's fantastic. So if you can share something, someone will appreciate that. And the pre-service guys, if you're sitting in a class and you found a really useful resource, someone will benefit from that if you share it beyond your own class. I can guarantee it. So the last little idea I wanted to share with you, other than the little share button, is this idea that we've been trying in Santa. I'm based in the library here at Trinity, and so we've been running these research lessons in particular for kids 7 through to 12, and we've been doing these digital exit tickets to actually check on their understanding. Simple little strategy, but again, if you've got a sequence of lessons and you want to check how the kids are going, it's pretty much too late if you're waiting till the assessment at the end of the unit. But something as simple as this, and if you'd like to go to that web link, it's live, you can do it on your phones. So just go to bit.ly/TMIW exit. So the point is, it's two questions. It's, do you feel more confident about using differentiation strategies after listening to these talks so far? And maybe it will be better to do it at the end of the night anyway. Are you confident, and what's something you learnt? Often we do it physically with post-it notes on the wall as the kids walk out of the room. But if you've got a Gmail account, whether it's school provided or not, if you've got a Microsoft account, school provided or not, you can do it digitally, saves it into a spreadsheet for you, and you can do amazing things tracking the kids' progress that way. Really simple, takes you 30 seconds. Sharing takes you 30 seconds. It can have some really great impact. Thanks a lot.
Christina manages the Media Lab project at AFTRS, the Australian Film, Television and Radio School. Christina has a background working with young people and media skills development. She has worked at a range of non-for-profit media organisations, and she's lectured in media in Sydney-based universities. Christina is going to be presenting for us a new project that AFTRS has developed, Media Lab, Screen Literacy for Schools. Thanks, Christina.
I'm here to tell you about Media Lab, a free online resource for teachers of primary and secondary students. Making movies is no longer all about Hollywood red carpet. It's a core literacy skill alongside reading and writing. It doesn't matter what you do or where you live, large and tiny screens are here to stay, and it's touching everyone. As you can see here, it's anticipated that by next year, video will account for 80% of global internet traffic. I just pulled out a couple of icons that I could find on a search today of TV channels that are being created around their product. So you don't need to be in the arts anymore to be making films. There's finance TV, medical TV, education TV. You probably can't see. The Department of Education needs to do better. They've got 868 subscribers there, so they need to do a little bit more on their video content on YouTube. But this is the way that all sectors are communicating with each other and with others outside their sector. We know that many students are actually already very media savvy. more so than their teachers. So how can we help teachers bring media skills into the classroom with confidence? This is the question we asked at AFTRS, the Australian Film, TV, Radio School. We looked at what is and isn't available, and we consulted with a range of teachers, and I'm just a bit unfamiliar with the PC. There we are. And we think that Media Lab is a really good solution to bringing media skills into the classroom. As I said, it's a free online resource. Our initial launch content, which we just launched this resource 6 weeks ago, includes 5 topic areas, as you can see there: stop motion filmmaking, doco, screenwriting, and podcasting. The initial content that we launched is primarily targeted at Year 7 students or teachers of Year 7 students, but it can be moderated by the teacher to meet a range of ages and abilities. For example, stop motion for years, targeted at Year 7 has been used for Year 4 students, science students, and doco has been used by Year 10 drama teachers wanting to teach mockumentary by drawing on documentary skills. Our aim is to grow the resource over the next 12 months to provide 3 levels of learning: intro, intermediate and advanced, across a range of subject areas, but this is what the school has got together at this stage. We want to share our expertise from camera techniques to budgeting to risk assessment. So filmmaking, TV production, radio content, podcasting. It's not just all about voice and acting. There are so many technical skills, financial skills, team organisational skills that go into making a good piece of content. We've also created sequenced and mix and match resources so teachers can curate the content as they see fit. You can walk through the class throughout the term. Each unit has been created to span one term, or you can pick and choose from the content to decide what you want to use. As mentioned already, it's really important to this project that media literacy does not remain in the arts domain, but it's translated across the school curriculum into all subject areas. And it's a good way to create a more engaging way to access a topic. Stop motion's particularly good for students who don't want to get into the whole filmmaking process, but can go into a stage process. I'll give you an example of that in a sec. And we also wanted the resource to be Australian. This is a major point of difference to other resources that can be found. We know that teachers often put into the Google search free filmmaking content, and British and American content comes up. All the content that we've listed in our resource is Australian content that is relevant to the diversity of the lived experience in Australia. So this just goes to our attempt to make sure that we're reflecting a whole lot of different storytelling styles within those 5 resources. It's instructional. We've got video instruction, how to do close-up, long shot, sound. There's video content there to help you way through. There's frequently asked questions. One of the first things we're asked at AFTRS is, what equipment does my school need? We've got a rundown on options from the simplest, cheapest, accessible digital mobile devices through to cameras, microphones, lighting kits, that sort of thing. We also want to make it interactive. We're waiting on some funding to make that happen. We've supported the development of this resource with the school's own resources thus far. We need another injection to take it to that next level. We also have a range of accredited teacher PD courses through NESA, both face-to-face and online, that open up the world of AFTRS, the film school, to all teachers. So, for example, we've got a one-day teaching filmmaking course at AFTRS. We've got an online mobile content creation course. But I guess the question at the end of all of this is, does it work? We've been piloting this project for a year before we launched it 6 weeks ago. And you can see there's a couple of different testimonials there from teachers who have used the resource in their classrooms, and they're finding that it's very engaging. As you can see, hard to get the kids to move out of the classroom for lunch. These kids are wanting to do this stuff. It's part of their life now. It's in their social media feed. They want to do it for social reasons, if not for academic reasons. So why not use the social motivation of engaging with media as part of the educational experience? We do feel it's probably teachers that are getting in the way of that happening, so that's why we've created this resource for teachers rather than for students, so that teachers are comfortable with the resource. So our ambition is to get the word out about Media Lab to everybody around the country, or the teachers around the country. We'd like it to become a community space where teachers can show what their kids have done, what their students have done in the classroom. As I said, we launched at the end of March, and we'd really love your help getting the word out, passing the word along about this resource as it builds. I'd be happy to take your feedback if I seem to be missing my last slide. I haven't given you the URL. It's medialab.aftrs.edu.au. That's it. Thanks very much.
We'd now like to welcome up Dr. Ken Silburn. Ken was the recipient of the Prime Minister's Award for Excellence in Science Secondary Education in 2015, and he was recently a top 10 finalist in the Varkey Global Teacher Prize out of over 26,000 nominations. Ken's going to be presenting for us tonight on iSTEM, the iSTEM program. Thanks, Ken.
Look, this slide, can I just tell you, dihydrogen monoxide is water, okay, H2O. So I'll read it for you. Ken has been, it's me, a science teacher for 25 years. He has easy access to chemicals. For the past 9 years, he has been adding dihydrogen monoxide to his morning coffee. Ken is now addicted. Without DHMO, he will die in 3 days. He continues to teach. Now, I always tell people that dihydrogen monoxide is water, H2O, because if I don't, then half the audience will think, oh, this is awful, this poor person he's addicted. And the other half will think, why is he in the classroom with kids? The next step is I actually make ice just at home in the freezer with water, but that's another story. You can all go, oh. Okay. This is William. William is 2 years old now. He's one of my grandchildren. I've got 3, so I'm starting to feel old. But I think when we talk about gifted and talented children, I would not know if he's gifted and talented, or he won't know if he's gifted and talented in playing basketball unless I give him a basketball or somebody gives him a basketball and gets him to play with it. And that's one thing which I find when we talk about kids. There's so many kids that we find that are probably gifted and talented, but they will never know, and we will never know unless we give them the opportunity. So, and I look at technology. If I talk about the Commodore 64, does anybody know what I'm talking about? Okay, good, okay. All right. My first computer, Commodore 64, 64K of memory. My wife, yesterday, her hard drive died, and she's upset now because she didn't back it up. But when I went today to buy a replacement, I mean, we're looking at, terabytes. And you talk about the information and how technology has made it so much easier for kids to communicate and to be engaged. I talk about the Commodore 64 as my old technology, the kids in your classroom will probably talk about iPhone 5. William, he'll probably have some implant in his ear that he'll just probably not even touch his ear, he'll just think about it and be able to communicate. Okay, two things I want to talk about today is one is an opportunity for students to go on an enrichment program to the US for Space Academy. We're going in the September school holidays. This was our first group that went back 10 years ago. Back then we just flew to the US, went to the space camp, came back. Then we actually thought, well, we're paying all this money to go over there, why not extend the trip and do other things? So, and spacecamp.com.au is the website if you want some more information about this. But the whole idea about Space Camp, I used to think it was just doing the sciencey type stuff, but it's actually being away from your parents for 18 days and actually looking after yourself being overseas. So you get to do students get to do all these animated or these simulations as far as astronaut training. And the teachers that go get to do the same thing. So there's a few things which are a little bit scary, like climbing up high things, but no one is actually being killed that I know of. There's also a few extra activities like this that look a little bit scary, but it's all confidence boosting. And they get to do scuba diving as well. These are some teachers. Teachers, when the students go to the space camp, students do the space camp, their course, teachers do their course. So if you're trying to get up your hours for accredited training, it's actually worth 60 hours at the proficient level, which is more than what you need. But because we're in the US, we're also doing all the other things, like we're going to New York, so 9/11, going to the Natural History Museum, the Intrepid, so we get to see a space shuttle there. Then we also go to Los Angeles. We get to go again to see another space shuttle because we go to the Academy of Sciences. And of course we go to a baseball game because you have to do that if you're in the US. If you're into history, we go to the Gettysburg for a day, and also Washington, and we get tired of going to lots of museums. Also a bit of fun because it's good to have lots of students that are interested in being overseas, and they're all good students. In years 9, 10 and 11, we've taken one student in year 12 once. Okay, I've spoken about iSTEM, the space camp, but I didn't explain what iSTEM is. When we first started off with the space camp, we had over 200 students that wanted to go on the trip. And obviously we didn't have room for 200, and it's also rather expensive. So we had all these kids that were keen on science, and we were doing all these activities for the kids that were going that were based on team building. So we thought, let's change it. Let's actually work on a program for students so they could actually get together with other kids that liked science and mathematics, and we called it iSTEM. The STEM, for obvious reasons, and the I because anything that's interesting for kids had to have an I in front of it. But it's amazing when students get together, they have conversations which are the high-level conversations. I remember walking through San Francisco, listening to a boy and a girl talk, and they stopped next to a heater, and they were just talking about conduction and convection currents. And I thought that was really sweet because they could not have done that back at school. They could have spoke about football, but they wouldn't have had someone that they could talk about science. It's got a little bit bigger now because we didn't do it this year, but we've also included going to Korea, and this year we've also been invited to take a group to China. We went last year, which was nice because it was all expenses paid, but the Chinese government's going to look after us there. The project that I think is going to be really good that's just started off, we're kickstarting, is called the Big Sundial Project. So out the front here we've got Space Academy and information about the Sundial Project. But basically, you could do it with your school, with classes, with students, and you make a very large sundial. And if you just go to our website, it'll give you all the information. And if students can work out their latitude and longitude and the time, then they can actually have, the program will spit out the exact measurements to make their sundial that works all throughout the year. And it's sometimes people call it the human sundial, but basically where you stand for your month of the year gives you the shadow and it tells you the time. It doesn't work during the night time, but most of the time it does. Okay. If you'd like some more information, iSTEM, we run activities that are basically on weekends. We go to things like the museums and ANSTO, but if you just go to our website, that's got all the details. So it's istem.com.au or spacecamp.com.au if you're interested. Please help yourself. We've killed lots of trees for those flyers for Space Camp, so please take lots. Thank you.
We'd now like to welcome up Catherine Reid. Catherine is a spelling specialist and Year 4 teacher at St Catherine's School in Waverley. As a THRAS ambassador, she regularly showcases her work at THRAS events across Australia. Last year, the Daily Telegraph ran an exclusive about how Catherine supports vocabulary development in a digital age. Catherine Reid's going to be presenting for us tonight on spelling, a paradigm shift. Let's make her welcome.
So what I'm going to show today is basically I'm just going to open up the walls of my classroom and invite you to have a look at a subject that I feel maybe doesn't lend itself to the integration of technology. So what I've called it is a spelling phenomenon. So it's a deliberate combination of the words phoneme, which are the speech sounds and words, and phenomenon. And it is a paradigm shift because in the younger years, what happens too often is that we are teaching children that letters make one sound. So how many schools we walk into where it's like A makes the sound A? Now, there are 44 sounds in the English language. So did anyone learn the vowels are A, E, I, O, U? It's a show of hands. Like who? Okay, it's not true. So I have children in my class that I teach grade 4, they join me in year 4, and they say to me, A, E, I, O, U, the vowels. And they're like, oh, maybe Y. I'm like, that isn't linguistically correct. If you go and study linguistics at university, that's not what you're going to get taught. There are 20 vowels in English. So we have to make this paradigm shift and start teaching linguistics correctly. So this is what we're trying to do at my school at St Catherine's. We're looking at the 4 pillars of literacy, which really underpin every subject across the curriculum. So the 4 pillars are orthography, which is the spelling system of the language. That's the order of the letters that we're spelling. Phonology are the 44 sounds in English, so that's your consonants and your vowels. Morphology is how the words make their meaning. So in the word creativity, the base word will be creative. When you add ing or d or li on the end of words, they're the suffixes, the words at the beginning, like unbelievable, you've got believe, you've got like breaking words apart. And then you've got the etymology, which is where do our words come from. So if you've got a 5-year-old, as Ken said, if you've got a child that's 4 or 5, you don't know how smart they are. If you're telling them, that A makes a sound A, and then you've got, Phoebe in your class who thinks, her name starts with a P. It's all just a bit ridiculous. You can't teach like P makes a sound P when her name is a digraph. PH makes a sound F. You really need to start raising the bar for the children in our classroom. So, how do I do this at St Cath's, and how have I been trying to help the teachers at my school? We used authentic examples of spelling in the real world. Explicit teaching of true linguistics, which is a bit scary because it's up to the teachers to learn, to have that knowledge, really. And K-6 mentoring and training, so that's staff training, staff workshops, starting with student strengths, which I've actually heard a few times tonight, which is wonderful. Models of thinking, so this is what I feel really passionate about, adapting our, like De Bono's thinking hats, visible thinking routines, adapting that in the classroom. There are different forms of documentation down here. Like, why do students need to rote learn spelling words and write them in lists over and over again? Why? Like, I find my children work best on whiteboard tables, mini whiteboards. I mean, chalk in the playground. It doesn't matter. If they want to use an iPad, if they want to use their laptop, we can't limit them to pen and paper or having to write in neat columns, encouraging them to be creative. International phonetic alphabet. So if you've ever Googled how to spell a word, underneath that word you'll get little symbols. So teaching the children to read that. So if you've got 5-year-olds that are saying, you know, free instead of 3, we need to actually teach them to read the IPA, the International Phonetic Alphabet, and then they can see where the errors lie. Technology integration, and also just the classroom environment, so making our classrooms exciting. So often with spelling, this is Bloom's taxonomy, we work down here. So it's about, you know, this is the word is station. Say the word station. Okay, now write station 10 times and repeat that every single night. What we've got to do, not just for our gifted children, but for all of our children in the mixed ability classroom, is flip that. So we've got our lower order thinking skills and our higher order thinking skills. So hopefully what you can see today is how I try and work up here with spelling, which is generally taught just knowledge based. So this is an example. I had a gifted child in my class last year who actually wasn't identified. I just caught her studying the raindrops on leaves, and she was just fascinated with how they were being formed when we were on Year 4 camp. And she'd actually just been sort of misidentified because she couldn't spell. And, you know, spelling isn't a measure of intelligence. So I just basically realized this kid, her brain is off with, like, the most creative questions. You know, she's so curious, and she's being told to rote learn or memorize words. It's not how she's going to work. So I tried to teach spelling in this creative way, and you can see, and this is called a word web, you can see all of the linguistic terms that I can cover just by doing it in this way, and then they'll be on their whiteboards, and this is all a reflection of the conversation we're having. I haven't got a program, or I'm not sitting there with a lesson plan. I'm just veering off based on what we're doing. They then can use the online dictionary, which the benefit of that is that the girls can look at the history of the word, the Greek origin, the Latin origin. We can read the IPA together. They can play with the suffixes. It's very interactive. It's also teaching them how to do that when they go back, when they're doing their homework or they're working independently. Also, what I was realizing is the correlation between my readers and my spellers. So my top spellers were my top readers. So I started to try and mirror up like the text. This is NIMS Island. And I'm picking spelling from words in context. You're not going to pick spelling words that are just like have no connection to what the kids are learning about. So looking at, say, the word knife and then brainstorming synonyms for that word, machete, focusing on that as our spelling word. Also, we have an email. This is a Promethean, so it works like a tablet. We had the class have an email, so we emailed the author and had a chat to her about things, and she's happy to Skype us. So we've got that set up for next term. So basically, promoting higher order thinking skills using technology, we need to focus on them creating, evaluating, and analysing. So this is just an example of the app HP Reveal, which used to be called Erasma. Has anyone used that in their classrooms? Flipping the classroom. So why are we making our students sit through the same spelling words, or we just need to be thinking about them as individuals. So flipping it, sending the spelling, the explicit teaching home, and then the sort of support students can maybe go slower. The gifted students, if they can already spell the word, you're then prompting them, you know, can you look at this? Can you add suffixes? What happens to the vowel if you change that? And then they can all go at their own pace. And then it leaves classroom time to do a lot more of that kind of thinking model strategy work. The Minecraft Mission Lab, when we were doing NIMS Island, I turned the classroom environment into a mission lab, and we called it Minecraft Headquarters, and it's inferential learning on the novel NIMS Island. So they recreated it in Minecraft. And then what they show, they literally read between the lines because they create things that you didn't even know, it wasn't even included in the text. So it's fascinating. Again, look at using Netflix, like disruptive technologies, use them in the classroom. Show them how you can actually use it positively. Like Anne with an E. Like who thought of Anne of Green Gables? Has anyone watched this series? I mean, so it's the Anne of Green Gables, but and it's fantastic. But why doesn't she just say, "Oh, my name's Anne. I have N and E. That's a trigraph. You know, it's 3 letters that make one sound." So we're having all these like fun conversations. Winston with a Y. Who thought of the advertising campaign? Like Winston with an, it as in pyramid. It's not that hard. TV. My Kitchen Rules. Sweet potato. I'm like, adults can't spell. And I say, I say that to the kids. I'm like, it's, fascinating. What's the error? This was on TV last night. What do we think about it? How would we teach them? Let's submit it, to Channel 9. Pronunciation is really interesting, and this is what I was talking about when we use the IPA here, obviously. The errors, if you analyse them in even younger years, what I'm really finding up in the stage 3 is it's the syllables. So like remember, when they write, they're skipping out syllables. Obviously, that's how this student was saying it. So the only way to teach them properly is to show them the IPA, because they'll just say, well, that's how my mum says it. Sorry, just quickly. Putting up their work, so mirroring it with my iPhone, and so that we can then have that conversation, peer learning, peer feedback. And then this is from kindergarten. This is a 5-year-old in November, and this is what happens if you raise the bar for those kids, and that was completely independent. Yeah, and yeah, if you feel free to connect if you want to talk about spelling. Yay! Thank you.
Last but not least, we'd now like to welcome Cameron Patterson. Cameron is a high school history teacher and the Director of Learning and Teaching at Shaw School. He's also on the faculty of Harvard's annual Project Zero classroom, and he is a Project Zero online coach. Cameron's going to be presenting for us tonight on students as change makers. Thanks, Cameron.
So TeachMeet, as it originated, was in a pub in Scotland, and it was intended to be educators having pretty cool conversations over alcohol. So I find myself here presenting to you on a Monday night, late on a Monday night. I used my presentations at TeachMeets to test ideas, so that's what I'm going to be doing now. This is a little bit unprofessional. The slides are forwarding every 20 seconds. There's going to be pregnant silences. I'm comfortable with that. I'm presenting this like a conversation in a pub, okay? So to start with, I'd like to contest some terms. Giftedness. I've got no expertise in giftedness, and I know there's a strong academic research base for it, but it's a contested term. In the Elevate project, they talk about high potential learners. I've got a belief that anyone can learn anything if they're interested enough and start early enough. So I'm uncomfortable with the label. I'm uncomfortable in the sense that I know labels have a lot of strengths, but I also know they've got weaknesses as well. I've been asked to talk about technology. Chris Lehman from the Science Leadership Academy in Philadelphia uses this amazing quote about technology being ubiquitous, necessary and invisible. I don't want to talk about technology. Technology is a tool. I would like to talk about what we can do with technology. And lastly, the notion of mixed ability. Surely every classroom is a mixed ability classroom. Todd Rose has written in End of Average. He's an expert from Harvard in applying neuroscience to education. Everyone's got strengths and weaknesses, even geniuses. So I question the notion of mixed ability, and I think we use it wrongly. I think sometimes when we talk about mixed ability, we mean mixed achievement or performance. So I'm going to pause having defined those terms and ask you to just reflect for 10 seconds or so on that question. Al Gore talks about, in his book The Future, he talks about how we're living in a radically different time of exponential change. Think of power shifting to Asia, technology, robotics, artificial intelligence has been mentioned this evening. Climate change, the scientific advances that we know about. David Perkins, Harvard professor in teaching and learning and cognition, asks this question. What did you learn during your first 12 years of education that matters in your life? Teachers, how would you teach differently if the exam was held in 20 years' time? I don't think we've got an achievement gap, I think we've got a relevance gap. Perhaps a huge information base is not the right priority for our times. This is a poster that appears on my office door. I think if you follow the press this week, you'll see the problems that emerge with NAPLAN and testing, over-testing in Australia. Dennis Fitzgerald, the firebrand and unionist, argues that what we're doing in Australia in relation to assessment is causing harm. Elevate is a project that my school's been involved in for the last couple of years, teaching us about ethnographic research. We've been interviewing the drifters in years 8, 9 and 10, and this is what they have to say. So we're living in a world where it's undertaking a massive paradigm shift at the moment. Schools are based on the idea of the industrial hierarchies, and yet at the same time, we're living in this networked world. It's an absolute paradigm shift. Hierarchies need unity. They need stability. Networks require diversity. Think of a starfish and a spider. If you cut off a starfish's leg, it grows another one. Perfect example of a network. Alcoholics Anonymous, Get Up, Amnesty International, Men's Shed, TeachMeet. Trees have networks. Did you know that? ISIS is a network. Think of what can be achieved with networks. Think of what we've seen in recent years in terms of the media with networks. Black Lives Matter, Harvey Weinstein, Me Too movement. But most particularly, what we've seen this year in relation to the Enough movement and the movement in the US for gun reform, particularly emerging out of Stoneman Douglas High in February this year. I was amazed, stunned, same as everybody else, watching the individuals who led that particular movement. David Hogg, eloquent, brilliantly speaking with virtually no notice in front of cameras. Emma Gonzalez, remember her speaking when her speech went viral with that pause in the middle? This is a picture that I took from Disneyland. And the tweet below is something that we've acted on in our school. We've now got a student think tank, a student voice movement in relation to teaching and learning. Students attend our heads of department meetings. Students attend our staff professional development days. I'm moving fast, aren't I? Anyone know what happened in Sweden on the 3rd of September 1967? Got some nods? They swapped the side of the road that they drove on. But as you can see, it was absolute chaos. Interesting to see in the paper today, as we're talking about NAPLAN, they talk a lot about taking things out of the curriculum. I think unlearning is going to become an absolutely crucial concept. This is a project from Harvard, Project Zero. Children are citizens based around really young kids in Washington, DC, using the city as a project, mapping and designing their learning entirely around using the city itself as a basis. And the idea is that we're not seeing children as something who people are becoming. They're children as citizens today, no matter how young they are. My school's starting a project for the next 2 or 3 years with Project Zero at Harvard, based around this concept of civic agency. Think about those two words, civic agency. Civic as in the idea of the Greek agora, where you go to discuss and take part in the city, and agency, independence. There are 4 key principles to civic agency as I can see it. First is the idea of crap detection. In Australia we might call it something else, but the idea, the complexities of news and information today and gathering in this networked age, how do we enable students to make sense of it? Do you think those sorts of skills might be helpful for gifted or high potential learners? Secondly, how we enable students to talk across differences in identities, differences in demographics, particularly in a school like this or a school that I work in. Do you think those sorts of skills might be helpful for gifted or high potential learners? And thirdly, I'm told that Einstein was no genius when he was at school. How can we give our students the ability to envision the new, the different, that concept of imagination, being able to see beyond what we're presenting to them day to day? Do you think they might be useful skills for gifted or high potential learners? And lastly, and perhaps most importantly, the idea of cultivating skills to develop a social change agenda. These are 10 questions for young change makers, perhaps useful for gifted or high potential learners. If we want our students to be able to lead this sort of social change agenda, then I would argue that as teachers we need to be doing the same. We're an activist profession. Education is a political act. There's a movement emanated out of the Netherlands in 2015 called Flip the System. Flip the System Australia is being written for release next year. It's about elevating the voices of those working in schools. It's about teacher autonomy. It's about respect for teachers. They're the sorts of things that lead to change makers. I believe that gifted students should be regarded as change makers, as activists, and the only way we'll get them there is to do it ourselves as teachers. Thank you.
On behalf of the Gifted Family Support Group and the Teachers Guild in New South Wales, I would like to thank you all for actually participating tonight on a very important topic. We're very, very fortunate having 8 wonderful presenters who've experienced in their own institution and what they're currently doing for our own students. I think we're in a very good position to actually look at these strategies and implement that in our own schools and reflect on what we're currently doing in our own practices and how we can improve in improving technology for our own students and our own schools. I just want to thank you for coming and really, really appreciate it. And I just wanted to, before I actually have the vote of thanks and thank all the presenters, can I have the other 4 panel members to come forward and just on the stage so we can all, when they do arrive, thank them all at once. Ladies and gentlemen, can we thank all our presenters?